Hey everybody. Hey everybody. We got started a little early, so I guess a lot of people checking in, which is cool. Hey, what's going on? It's a good little turnout. Okay, so I guess I'll get started. Hey everybody, my name is Vitus Shell. I'm in my studio right now. I can tell you a little bit about myself. Yes, this is my studio. So I'm in my studio right now, and my studio is in Monroe, Louisiana, my hometown where I was born and raised. My studio's in the back of a building that's it's kind of like a mini mall. It's got multiple things going on inside the building. It kind of reminds people of the movie Barbershop, because it has like barber shop stands. We have a notary guy. We have somebody to do t-shirts. So we have a few things going on inside our studio, inside of our shop. So it's not a traditional space when you think of studios, but this space is kind of like, it's really good for me because with my work, I'm really community oriented. So I like to be in a community. I like to be in a space with a lot of people. I like to see a lot of people, and that kind of like adds to what I do. It kind of puts a lot of it gives me a lot of things to work from. So that's why this space has been pretty good for me. In the next few months I'll be here, and hopefully I'm thinking of moving, but I'm not sure where I'm gonna move yet. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm from Monroe, Louisiana, which is North Louisiana. And I took art all through mostly high school. I didn't. My first art show that I had was when I was 3, so I was always into making art. My mom was always a person that kind of not pushed me to make art, but she was there kind of like encouraging. Whatever it kind of like came out of it, she would kind of like do the best she can. I grew up poor, so I didn't have access to everything, like as far as like paints and canvases and all that stuff. But when I got to high school, I got into the talented art program. I had a couple of teachers that kind of like encouraged me in different ways. So for me, I'm always encouraging teachers to be that person for students, because you never know how that helps kids, because I grew up in the projects and we grew up poor and I didn't have access to a lot of things. But something fell in my studio. But my first teacher, my second high school teacher, she encouraged me to play around with a lot of different materials, paint, draw. She gave me all kinds of stuff to paint on, draw on, canvas, all that stuff. And then my senior year, I got a new teacher, and he encouraged me to apply for school. So when me applying to school, I end up going to school in Memphis. So I went to Memphis College of Art in '96, and for me, Memphis was sort of perfect. It was kind of like everything that I wanted as far as a college experience. So when I was thinking about college, I was thinking about I wanted to go to an art school. I wanted to do a 4-year program, and I wanted to be able to soak up as much as I could. And Memphis was that place for me. I had the dean there was a guy named Alonzo Davis. I never got a chance to work under Alonzo, but Alonzo was a pretty big guy. He was a part of the '85 art movement in California. He was a part of the murals that happened. Yeah, the murals that happened in '85. I think it was '85 during the Olympics. He was a part of that. He was also one of the first black gallery owners in LA. And for him, he was always open-minded, and what he did for me was he introduced me to one of my mentors that I met while I was in Memphis, and her name was Brenda Joy Smith, and she was originally from Memphis but lived in Oakland, went to grad school in Chicago, and moved back to Memphis. So as he introduced me to her and told me she had just moved back to town and that she was looking for an apprentice, and working under her as she was a full-time artist. That was like a part of my my education, and it was important because it showed me that I could be an artist. Growing up in the projects, growing up in Monroe, I didn't really see people that was like really invested in making art, doing it full time. And to meet her, kind of like opened my eyes, and it kind of said like, yo, this is what I want to do. Especially as a black person growing up in North Louisiana, which is still real segregated part of the country. But meeting her, she's a black woman. She was prolific. She's done so much. She showed that introduced me to like how to kind of like, go in the studio and work your studio, how to do research. And her husband did the business of the business for them. So with them, I kind of like got the education on both sides, the art, the business of making art, and the art of doing business as an artist. So that was super important, and it's been like a lot of things that I've kind of like used since then to kind of like keep my career going. I was there to see like, the ups and downs of being an artist, when sometimes when you're stuck in a rut, or even when the money's low, like how you just continue to make and making produces more work, right? So I practice that now, and so I was there. I graduated in 2000 from Memphis College of Art, and became a part of an artist collective, which was, for me, I think another part of my education, being a part of a group of artists. It was a black group of artists in Memphis, and the group kind of came about because in Memphis it wasn't a lot of like galleries that showed black artists. So we came together and we started critiquing each other's work, and we came up with this idea like, yo, let's put our own stuff together. Let's start showing our own in our own spaces. So we would show anywhere in a cafe, in an old frame shop, in somebody's apartment, just anywhere we would do things. So that was a part of like my continuing education, like having this collective of people that I can bounce ideas off, people I can vent to about things that were going on, and even like learning, from these other artists, because in that collective we had artists that were on different levels. We had some guys that hadn't been to school. We had some people that had been to, big colleges. We had some people that had went to small colleges. Some people had dropped out of college, but we never judged each other based on those things. We just kind of like used what we all had and kind of like collectively, work, kind of like the Avengers or something. But that was a part of my education. And I started really like showing around the country, and because like being in the collective, that kind of like helps you to work through fears. You can go put the show together with people and get some feedback and everything like that. So that was an important part of my education. And in 2005, I had a show at I think it was either 2004 or 2005. I had a show in the little town of Oxford, Mississippi, which is the where the University of Mississippi is, Ole Miss. One of my professors from undergrad was teaching there at Ole Miss, and she was like, "Yo, we got some openings in our art department. You should apply." And at the time, I was like, I was showing my work around and stuff like that, and I was like, I'm gonna try this because it'll give me room to kind of like go and do other things that I want. And like sometimes as an artist, people don't take you as serious when you don't have certain things attached to your name. But I always tell other artists that I meet that's not, that doesn't make you or break you. It's just something that you can use to go into these other doors that you need sometimes. And it also gives you like something to fall back on. You can go teach on the college level. You can do, all kinds of stuff. And then I went to Ole Miss, and I went as a printmaker. I was already a painter, and I didn't feel like that's what I had to go to grad school for printmaking. And one of the things that I've always done when I was in a university setting was I like to try different things. When I was in undergrad, I did graphic design. I did printmaking. I did sculpture. I was never good at sculpture, so it's gonna be hard to get me back in that department. I've done digital art. I tried a little bit of everything while I was in undergrad. So when I got to grad school, I still kind of used that as my thinking, like let me try to expand what it is that I do, and that's kind of like how I went about my graduate career. So while I was there, I was playing around with printmaking. I learned that I wasn't the person that do things over and over again. So for me, it was kind of like monotypes were more like what I like doing. I like to do something and let it go. I like to do some screen print and let it go. But I came on to this other thing, which was foam cuts. And foam cuts is basically like a stamp. You use an X-Acto knife, you cut into the foam, and you can print on to surfaces. I can see if I got one around here somewhere. Hold on. So this is a foam cut. And basically I use this, I ink it up, and then I stamp my paintings. So that was one of the things that I picked up in my in grad school, was kind of like thinking about layering, because with my work, when I think about issues in communities, I think of issues as being this layered thing. I don't think of them as this thing that you see at face value. So in my work, I do a lot of collaging. I paint on paper, cut it out, and collage that on top of canvas, and then I do like prints like this. So in my work, if you have a chance to go look at my work, you will see like it's a lot of graphic design elements in my work, because I do so much on the computer. I do a lot of flyers and stuff like that for people, business cards. So in my paintings, it becomes the same thing, like me thinking about space in that way, like thinking about collage, like the same way I would collage or mask off areas in my painting. That becomes a part of the work. So let's see. So let's see. We can start looking at some things. Oh, I have another one. So this is another foam cut. And you see it's a pink foam that you get from Home Depot or any one of those stores like that. And I ink it up. Usually using something like this type of ink, which is it's like block print, but it's water based, so I don't have to worry about like getting rid of it, trying to trash the oils or whatever. So I usually use a water based ink. So a lot of times I'm doing a lot of collaging, as you can see here. Painting on, this is on unstretched canvas. And usually when if you come to the show, you'll see that my work is all unstretched. And I am going to pull out some other pieces that's not gonna make the show. So I'll pull those out a little later. So I'll show you around my studio a little bit. So these are some pieces I'm working on that's on paper. I usually work on something that's 2D, so it's usually paper or canvas. And sorry about that. But yeah, this is on paper. And this is something I started maybe a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And I haven't had a chance to get in the studio because of the whole, social distancing thing. So, and this is usually my setup. So I usually work here. And this is something I picked up from another artist about using your pad, because I used to print everything out. This is some of my unstretched canvas. This has been gessoed. I do a lot of collecting. So, and I do a lot of collaging using old magazines. These are more like surfaces that I'm preparing to and these are like some of the things I'll start tearing out and collecting for myself to work on later. Let's see what else I have in here. I'm gonna try to pull this big piece out, but this is canvas that I'm cutting into collage. on to some paintings that I'm working on. As you can see, I have a lot of ebony magazines, and I have some periodicals that I've found that libraries were getting rid of. So make sure you go check at your library and don't let them throw those books away. You can use them for something else. These were being thrown away at one of the university libraries. And I was like, I wish I had the van that I have now, and I would have more of these. So as you can see, I do a lot of collecting. And even I found this, it had a frame on it, and I was like, I can use that for something. So this is kind of like what I have in my studio right now. These pieces came from, I just left the Golden Foundation. And at Golden, they gave me, because we had to leave early, we had to leave early because of the whole COVID thing. I was there for the month of March, and we had to leave early. So they let me leave with this right here, this box of goodies. Perfect. And that was an awesome experience too. Yeah, I have some more stuff on the floor here. So this is another piece that I'm preparing to get ready to work on, smaller piece. So this is kind of like how the work kind of starts. The background is, I think it's just regular latex paint on the background of this. So one thing I have to be cautious of is how I bend this, because it'll start cracking. And that's something that latex paint does. But yeah, these are, I'll kind of show y'all these pieces here. Let me see if I can switch. And these are about 50% done. I'm still working on these. I'm gonna do some cut paper, collage that on, paint over it, and it's gonna mimic the whole gold frame portraits that I've been working on. But with these, I'm gonna cut out things and kind of decorated where it mimics the whole gold frame. So the red is the underpainting, and I'm gonna come back with some gold. And this is the gold I've been using. And let's see. These are some other paper pieces that I'm using. I'm working on. So, and as you can see, I really like working with paper. I like working with paper, and I like working with unstretched canvas a lot. It's one of my favorite things to work with. So I like doing a lot of that stuff. And me working on paper, let's see. These are some other smaller pieces that I was working on. It's one of my favorite. There's nothing on it, so I get to do what I want. But this is kind of like where the direction those pieces are going into. So it's some silk screening in the background. Some drawing, some painting. Some collaging. You can see I like using Xeroxes too. It's kind of hard to get Xeroxes now, oversized Xeroxes with inkjet, with laser jet print. So, and there's just some other things that I haven't quite got started, but so that's kind of like a look around my studio. And so what I'm gonna try to do now is I could talk a little bit. Let me talk a little bit more about my work. So with my work, a lot of times I like to call for models. And I'm usually, hold on. Okay, yeah, okay. So I like to do call for models, and I like to use people, just regular everyday people in my work. And usually when they model for me, I kind of like give them the freedom to model how they want to model. And a part of that is because as Black folk, sometimes we're police so much that we don't have the freedom to just do things that we like to do. So when I have models that model for me, I also allow them to kind of like, figure out what they like. And I tell them, I was like, when you're taking pictures for Instagram, just just go. And a lot of times I just kind of like let them take pictures, because sometimes you do get models and they're a little nervous, but they want to participate. But as you talk to them, I talk a lot. I ask them a lot of questions, get to know them. And I think a lot of times when you see my portraits, you can see that it's really like something, some things that's not things you can't explain that's in the work, and that's because I really get to know my models, talk, and I ask them a lot of questions and everything. So in my work, I usually use figures because one of the main reasons I use figures is because I think about my mother, my cousin, people that grew up like from backgrounds like similar to myself that didn't have that art education. One thing about the figure, it's a thing that anybody can identify with. It's a accessible tool. So when my mother might come to my show, I want her to, at least get one thing out of my work. I don't want her to feel like a stranger. I want her to feel less than, because, a lot of times as artists, we're preaching to each other, and that's fine. I don't have any problems with that. But I also want my cousin to be able to come to the show and be able to participate in the conversation some kind of way, see work, see something that they can identify with. So I think that's just important in the way when I think about my work. And a lot of times, even when I'm talking about my work with my family, a lot of things that they talk about become a part of how I'm thinking about my work. We've all been through art school and done the whole, art theory thing. And so we get that, but I always think about like these people that haven't done that, and how important it is for them, to also be able to identify with the work. And that one little thing can open up a door for them to really start thinking about other things in the same way. And I definitely think about little kids that came from similar communities that I came from. How do they feel when they see the work? Do they get it? Is it something that they would want to do later, and they're on their own? And I think that's a part of like things that I really, really think about. With my work, I'll say this too. With my work, I reflect on who I am as an individual, being a Black man that's in the South, that grew up with hip hop. I think of myself as that person, right? I think of myself as this hip hop artist that's making artwork, So a lot of times I'm using like hip hop music as a starting point for the work, and I use that also as an entry point for it. So when students or my parents or a cousin or a friend might see the work and they're like, oh, I know this is one of Nipsey Hussle's songs, or I know this is one of Lil Wayne's songs. I know this is Cardi B's from Cardi B music or something. I use that, like the titles, to kind of like be that kind of like thing too, because I also feel like with hip hop has become so disposable that we don't respect it as an art form. So I like to use the artist as a point of reference, because I think that they are speaking for a certain group of people. And even if it's the commercial music, I still think it's super important what they're saying, because it's about something. So I always reference Juvenile, Back That Ass Up, right? Especially for students. That's still important music, because it's about celebration. And a lot of times communities that don't have much, the only thing they do have is the ability to celebrate. So sometimes in dealing with stress, this is a way to deal with stress, to take my mind off of what I can't control, for 4 minutes, however long a song is, and just put all of my energy into this dancing, So I think it's still an important thing, that that comes out of like a lot of the music. And it's just like to me too, like when you think about what's the guy name, Iceberg Slim, that wrote the books about the pimp culture. Somebody had to talk about the pimp culture so people could understand it and understand that it was a thing, and we could learn from that, and we can learn not to go back to that, right? So Iceberg Slim writing about pimp culture was important because it documented this thing that existed, and it still exists, and it's things that we still have to deal with. So I think even when we listening to rap music, even in the fact that it's it has its problematic parts, it's still important, and I like to use that use those things as ways to kind of like start my work. What else do I need to talk about? What else is important in my work? I usually paint with acrylics. So everything that golden was perfect because I got to use golden. I got to use the golden brand. I got to learn about paint more than I would have ever probably learned. The mediums, the grounds, the gesso, the varnishes. Excuse me. I learned about all those things, and I think that was one of the things that I really want to do more. I want to learn a little bit more about the paints, and of course you learn a little bit more as you play around and you read. What else can I talk about? Let's see, we're around 7:35. Okay, what else is it? I usually, this is kind of like my usual setup with the lights. I like to have some really good lighting because of the paint when I'm painting. I don't want my colors to be so off. What else can I talk about? I'm gonna try to pull out a couple of these canvases that's wrapped up. So give me a second. This is one of the pieces I'm working on. These are painted on paper. And collaged onto the background. These are the foam prints. And you see it's a lot of paint on here. So it's a build-up on the background. Let's try to open this one. just got this work back from Tennessee. It was in a show in Nashville or Jackson, Tennessee, one of those cities. Kind of like a present. So these are painted on paper. It's a lot of oversized exact photo copies in the background on raw canvas. You can see the grommets, and then the black is the foam cut prints. So I did some big size prints on here. We got a couple questions too, so that's good. Oh, one question. Let me get on the other side. Look at the glare. And this is the foam cut print. The foam cut is that's over it. It's fast. I like it because it's fast. The same reason I like painting with acrylics. I don't have to take a year to paint. I don't have to take a year to cut my block. Something I can do in a week, ink it up in a day, and print it in a day. Painted on paper. See some of the images in the background. I take pictures of the models. I don't paint from. I don't draw from them live. I just paint from up. I take photos and usually paint from that. This is based on the Andy Warhol's Elvis piece. And it was based on an article I was reading about like how old, like with all of the police shootings, how like kids as young as 5 could be seen as a threat because of institutional racism, where you're not even thinking, you're not intentionally being racist. Sometimes it's just that because you've internalized it so much, is that you can't see a kid as being young. So the background is it's the same thing. It's a bunch of collaging. If you can see, let's see if you can see. Yeah, can you see that? So I do a lot of collaging on the backgrounds. Okay, I can start. I'm sorry about that. when question about the backgrounds, and I'll start answering the other questions. But so my backgrounds, I like to use my backgrounds as, to me, they become these environments that we live in, and things that exist around us sometimes that we don't know or even pay attention to, but they become a part of us. So a lot of my backgrounds are that whole thing of playing with the whole stereotypical images of Black folk and the whole history of that, and how those things, maybe not intentionally, people are being racist, but it becomes a part of all of us, and even to the point that that Black folks even internalize it, and we use it towards each other, that racism that exists. So the whole policing that goes on, when you watch how angry a police officer might get with somebody that asks them, like, why did you pull me over? It's a thing of that they've internalized this racism, and they just kind of like react. It's natural and it's a reaction. So a lot of times in my backgrounds, that's what I'm playing around with, these environments that exist around us. And I started doing this work in, which was interesting, around 2008 or something like that. And it was at a time when the climate wasn't what it is now. People wasn't outly just being racist. But it's interesting that in this time period, this work was made before this time period, but how in this time period, racism that's been around is outwardly being shown again. Especially when it comes to black folk. And I'm only speaking for Black folk, but it's racism all across the board, especially with dealing with people of color. That's going on. And it's just, for me, it's a thing of trying to make people aware that these things exist, and to we all have to deal with it, and so that's what's going on in the backgrounds. Let me start answering some more of these other questions. Give me 1 second. I feel like an old man. Okay, let's see. Okay, how long did it take you to make this? So most of my work, I usually work on several pieces at a time. So it's never like I'm doing one piece at one time. It's kind of like I float between a few pieces, because sometimes I'm trying to figure out things as I work. So I think it's super important for me to continue to do things while I'm in the studio, and not to overthink things. So I like to do several things at one time. So I might have a drawing on the table. I might have a couple paintings on the wall. I might have something that I'm cutting into in another place. So I'm doing several things at a time. It's not like I spend like 8 hours on one thing. I'm working on 3 or 4 things. So it might take a couple weeks to do those several things. And I've done like a lot of residencies, so it really gives me that time to like stop with like life. Life is like real, like things going on around us. But doing residencies is giving me a chance to like kind of stop and really focus on what I'm doing while I'm there. So one of the things I've been doing for the last 7 years, pretty much 7 years, is really like attacking the whole residency thing. I've done about 8, or I think I've done 11 total, but in the last 7 years, I've probably done like 9. So it's been a big thing for me to like give me time to like take a step back from other things that I got going on. If it's teaching, if it's like family, if it's whatever, that gives me that time to, really focus on work. Let's go to the next question. Can you see the questions here? Yeah, I can. My bad. I'm just getting to it. Yeah. Okay. And let's see. Okay. Oh yeah. So if you got questions, please use the question button. That's gonna be an easier way for me to keep up with your questions because when the timeline, everything is moving. And let's see, I got one more question. Okay, is that canvas or paper? So yeah, in my work, I'm using canvas and paper. I like to use both, and I don't necessarily have a rhyme and a reason when I use canvas, when I use paper. But I like to kind of float between the two. I love paper. I like taking paper and gessoing it, so it has the same feel of canvas, but a little slicker. So I like painting on that sometimes. And then with canvas, I like to paint and build on canvas too. So, and I really like in my latest show, I've really been using a lot of canvas on top of canvas, so building canvas up to mimic the whole golden frames thing when you think about portraiture and high class art and compare and making work that kind of compares to that kind of reference that style of work. Let's see, okay. I'm gonna try, let's see, can you talk about the backgrounds and form the portraits and okay, so I talked about the backgrounds. So hold on, I'm sorry. I'm going through, I'm gonna do both. Thank you. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get back to this screen. Okay, I got some questions again. 4 questions. Okay, do your models visit or buy your artwork? I haven't had any of my models to buy any of my artwork. So no, I haven't had a model to buy any of my work, but I try to do something for them because I think it's important that they own the work too. So it's one of the things that for me, I've really, really been thinking about a lot. How do I make sure that the people that's modeling for the work are also a part of they get to, own the work to own something. So it's one of the things I'm really like trying to figure out. Let's see. What artist inspires you? So what artist inspired me is I'm a big Kerry James Marshall's fan. And I might have his book somewhere around here. I like Michael Ray Charles. I like Barkley Hendricks. I like Kehinde. Of course, you can see the influence in the work. I really have like a long list of artists that I kind of follow. Rauschenberg, I really like his collaging. I got a long list of artists pretty much, but Klimt, I really like his work. Of course, I'm mimicking that whole thing with the gold and the figures and mixing that in. So I really like what he does. Let's see, what's the next question? Can you talk about the eye contact your subjects have with the viewers? Yeah, I think it's just a thing that some people, when I'm doing the portrait, some people choose to look at the camera, some people don't. I think the biggest thing for me when I look at the models is you can see that they have a lot of swag. And I don't even know if that's a cool word to still use, swag. But they do have a lot of this unspoken charisma. They have charisma and all that stuff. So as far as like eye contact, I think it's just depend on the model. Some models look you directly in the eye. Some of the models look off. And you know, sometimes I encourage them to look off a little bit, kind of like give me a little bit of this, give me a little bit of that. But the ones that do look you in the eyes, you can tell that they have a lot of pride and everything. So it's really like a big thing for them. Let's see. I'm gonna answer some more of the questions in the book in here. Okay. Are other artists that inspire you? I answered that question. How much does the location of how does the location of the work where you do your residence? Oh, so let me read that again. How much does the location of where you do your residency influence what you create? I think for me, so when I do residencies, for part of what I like doing is connecting with people. Like when I come to Minneapolis, that's one of the things I'm gonna make sure I venture out and connect with like the community, see what's going on in the community. Meet people, go hang out in like the regular spots, see what good food is there, see what what's the hidden gems and all that stuff. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So a part of with me, sometimes it take a little time for whatever I digest to kind of like come out. So sometimes when I visit a place, so like I visited Omaha, and I did the Bemis residency. In Omaha, I would go get my hair cut in North Omaha, which is where Malcolm X was born. It's a predominantly black neighborhood. They have the Union that's over in that area. And for me, that's a part of how I kind of like get to know a community, especially like going to the barbershop. That's the pulse of community most of the times, right? It's where you hear a lot about what's going on, who got arrested, who's the favorite basketball player, what's going on with the high schools. So a lot of times for me, I go hang out in the community, and that influence comes out a little later. So even if I take pictures of the people that's in that community, that work might not immediately get done, right? It's gonna take a little while for me to get there. So saying I got a minute and 46 seconds. Let me try to get a couple more answers. Questions answered. Let's see. Do you have any up? So right now, I have a show that's at the Hilliard Museum in Lafayette, Louisiana. It's one of my biggest shows to date. It's in the museum. It's one of my first funded museum shows. I've had a couple museum shows. I had one other museum show, but that's my first funded museum show. So if you get a chance, make sure you go check that out. Go check out the Hilliard, the show at the Hilliard. You can always purchase a book online. This is the show. It's called Bout It, the political power of just being. The work is about just black folks just being, like I was talking about earlier, not being policed by anybody. So make sure you can order a book online. It's on Amazon, and you can order it directly through the bookstore that's at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette's on their campus. What else? Hey everybody. The video ended a little early, a little 5 minutes. I guess it was a couple minutes early, a couple seconds early than I expected. So we're back. I'll give you all a chance to get back on. But I guess in the other video, I had a question about other shows that I have. Of course, with the whole coronavirus thing, I do have some shows that's planned. I had another residency that was planned for VCCA in Virginia. Had a show in Memphis, and I had this show that was planned for April. These two, this show and the show in Memphis, planned for April. So they're rescheduling those shows. So I'm just kind of like waiting to see how everything kind of play out, especially with this week with the whole they're lifting some of the restrictions on the band. So I'm kind of seeing what's going to happen as far as with that. But I do have a couple shows that's planned. So, you know, everybody's schedule is kind of like mixed up right now. Everything is pushed back and some things are being canceled. The show that's in Lafayette, it was supposed to end May 2nd, I think. So with everything closing, they're going to extend that show, and I think until August. And with that show, we're trying to, which is this show, about it, political power just being. I guess you can see that. With this show, we're planning to have it travel. So that's one of the things that we're working now, trying to find other museum spaces that could bring the show in, who has the funding to bring that show in. So that's one of the things that I'm working on right now. Of course, personally, I'm working on applying for some teaching positions. So I'm looking into that stuff right now. Still, even though it's late, super late, I'm still working on that. And yeah, that's pretty much the majority of stuff that I have going on right now. Hold on, I got a question. Okay. How do you go about getting your shows? So for me, because I'm like middle range, I'm like middle career. I'm not as known as some other artists. I apply for a lot of things. So I do a lot of searching. A part of the thing that I talked about earlier when it comes to like learning the business, the business of making art and the art of business. Part of my practice is to always look for opportunities. So I spend a lot of time doing the business of being an artist. I go look into residencies. I go look into exhibition calls. I do all of that stuff. I put a lot of time into that part, really like doing the business, like looking, seeing what's going on. I do a lot of emailing. Like for this show, I put together a big list of all of the museums, and I email all of those people so they'll know that I exist. I'm a believer that you shouldn't just wait for somebody to find you. You have to be a part of, that, thing that happens. Like you have to put it out there so people can see your work, and really find in different ways, different avenues to kind of like get that thing to happen. And I like to do things that's untraditional in that. So like even for myself, I do a lot of murals and stuff. And in doing murals, that's one of the things that people are gonna talk. Like somebody's gonna say, "Yo, you should check out this artist." This artist I saw in Coldwater, Mississippi. That's a place that in the middle of but that's south of Memphis, but it's kind of like off the beaten path. But people talk all the time, and one of the things about murals it's a way to connect directly with people. So I like doing things. I like adding things to my repertoire that's different from the norm, because even like me thinking about my mother and people like my mother, people like my cousin, that don't go to museums and galleries, it's a way to connect directly to people. And that's a thing that I really like doing too. And I think the model thing is another thing that's directly connecting to people that wouldn't normally come into the museum. And then they like, yo, I gotta bring my family, I gotta bring my friends to come see the work. So it's a way to connect to people and get people to come to spaces that wouldn't normally come. So that's how I kind of like go about getting shows. I really like, I get people to look at my my proposals, friends that's in on the administration side. I get them to look at it. I get some of my writing friends to kind of like help me structure what I'm writing and all of that stuff. So just getting a lot of feedback from people, just knowing that it takes more than one person to get something done. And I like to, so that's a part of me being a community person. I like using other people around me to help get things done that I do. And I do a lot of helping other people too. So that's one of the things that I like doing. Any other questions? Okay, I guess there's no more questions. I want to say thank you to the Visual Arts Center. Thank you for really giving me this opportunity to show, to visit. Hopefully when all of this stuff is over, I can come and hang out in Minnesota, check out Minneapolis, and check out all the things that's happening in Minneapolis. Thanks for everybody that made this thing happen, Carolyn and everybody. So if it's no more questions, I think I'm gonna sign off. Y'all got any more questions? Okay, appreciate it. Okay, I'll follow you back. Let's see. I got a question. Okay, let's see. Could you do one more quick? Let's see. What could you do? One quick shot of your work. All right. So everybody that didn't make the first video, I kind of walk around my floor, and my floor is a mess now, so that's a good thing. So let's see. I have these pieces on paper. I have these pieces that I'm working on that are in the works. I have this piece that we looked at earlier. have this kit. And you see with the cut into the foam with an X-Acto knife, it kind of gives you like the wood cut effect. And this is the foam cut, so kind of get an idea of what that looks like. And I love these because you can't, the foam cuts, because you can't control everything about the foam cuts, but they kind of like have a life of their own. They kind of do what they want to do too. So this is more. I got a bunch of stuff, so. Any other questions? All right. So, like I said, I thank everybody that showed up. Trying to see if there's anything else I should show. Yeah, here you go. So, make sure if you guys find like magazines, keep them for me. So when I come, I can take them back with me. I find all kinds of interesting stuff. I haven't tore into those yet. This is some of the canvas that I got. I have this real big piece that I'm working on right here. So it's on my Instagram. So check out my Instagram. Follow me. Yeah. So all right. So make sure if you guys find like magazines, keep them for me. So when I come, I can take them back with me. I find all kinds of interesting stuff. I haven't tore into those yet. This is some of the canvas that I got. I have this real big piece that I'm working on right here. So it's on my Instagram. So check out my Instagram. Follow me. So, all right. Yeah. So that's it. So, yeah, you can follow me at what's on my shirt, if you can read it. The Shell of Vitus. Follow me. And, you know, if you got any other questions, you know, hit me up, inbox me. So thank y'all. Y'all see I'm a little rough. I haven't had a shave in a while. So got some stuff going on there. And that gray hair been popping up. I don't know where that came from. I don't know where that gray hair came from. Yeah. But yeah, thanks to everybody for coming out, and I appreciate y'all. I see y'all when the show happens. So peace.